Hey folks, 4WD here. Video for you today on scale model truck winches and how to make them better. And when I say better, I mean more powerful and faster. So let's just dive straight in. The reason I've been looking at winch performance is because the winch I've got on my SCX10 Jeep Rubicon is it's a 3 racing winch, 1/10 scale one, and it's been working absolutely fine. I've done all sorts of horrible things to this and stuck it in water loads and it still comes back for more, but it just isn't quite powerful enough for what I'd like on my rig. It's quite a heavy rig now with a few metal upgrades. It's almost 9 pounds sometimes, and this rig does stall out on the winch occasionally, and also it's a bit slow. I would like something a little bit faster. I've done a few competitions now where there's a gate course and it's on a time limit, so waiting for a winch to wind out and wind back and it's slow is a lot of precious seconds. So okay, what are we going to do? Well, first of all, I want to show you something interesting on this winch, and then we'll get into a few tests. Now I've just turned my truck on. It's sat on the shelf for a couple of weeks after a competition, and the winch has not been run at all, and something interesting happens. If I just start to run the winch, you'll find it goes really slow to start with. So if I go to unwind my winch here, see how slow it is? And I'm not pulling this, I'm just keeping tension. And then look, now it's a lot faster again. So now it's nice and quick, and it's pulling in with some force. So obviously there's some rust or something going on inside. Maybe there's some muck on the brushes of the motor, I don't know, but it's not quite how it used to be, and obviously it's not going to get any better. So I want to have a look inside and see what's going on. So let's take this winch off, and we can start to do some tests. Right, so let me explain to you the test setup we're going to do. I've got a number of tests I want to try out, and we're going to use a brand new 3 racing winch, a replica RC4WD Warn winch, and my used 3 racing winch. These are all 1/10 scale winches, and what I want to do is try out some different winch controllers. I've got a 3 racing one, I've got a Kappu remote control one, and a HeyOKPerformance winch controller, and also standard motor, a Snatch block to give you more power, and also I've got an upgraded motor to try. So we're going to bang through all of these tests, and we're going to do that on this little rig I've set up here. It's just a block of wood. At one end we've got a couple of nails stuck in that lets me hang this little digital set of scales here. It's kind of for fishing or weighing your luggage. You just pulls down on that and gives you a reading. Right, so here's the little set of digital scales we're going to use. You can see if I pull down here, we start to register a force, and then you can let go and it'll go back down. If the force is static for a while, it'll actually hold and lock that reading. So that's what we're going to use. I'm doing everything in grams today. I apologise for folks in the States and Canada. Could do pounds and ounces as well, but that would just take too long, but we can convert it all later on. And at the other end I've just drilled some holes in here, and you can attach a winch. So that's our rig. So what we need to do is something to control this. So I'm just going to use my Spectrum DX3 transmitter. I've got a little orange RX receiver from Hobby King, and we need to give that some power. Now I'm going to use a Beck for this, so that's a 6-volt Beck that I'm just going to plug into the back bind socket there, and then plug a 2S LiPo into the Beck. That's just to give us 6 volts on the receiver. So if I switch that on, the receiver's now on, and we now need to plug that into the winch, but we need a winch controller. So the first thing we're going to do is just kind of standard out the box. This is the winch controller from a 3 racing winch. This is a 3 racing one here, CR01-27 automatic crawler winch with control system. This is the 1/10 scale one. Now this is an okay winch controller. I've been using a couple of these. You can run them either by pushing the button to turn on and off, and you've got this signal wire here to go in your receiver. So I'm going to pop that in the auxiliary port on the receiver. And these you can put a battery in. It could be a 7.2 volt NiCad or a 2S LiPo. I know some people have run these on 3S LiPos, but when the winch tends to stall out on a high load, they do tend to burn these out. So I don't recommend 3S on there. We're just going to use 2S today. Actually, I don't have the right plug, so let's use one of my adapters just to pop onto that Tamiya and turn it into a Dean's connector. So this is a It's just a Hobby King or Turnigy Nanotech 2S battery to power the winch controller. So let's plug the winch in. So now I've set up the auxiliary channel on here on the transmitter to be a 3-position switch. So if I pull down on the button, it's winding in, and if I pop it out the other way, it's paying out. So that's the test rig. So let's get some benchmark tests done with a standard out of the box, never seen water, never used before 3 racing winch, and then we can test the other ones. Right, so here's test number 1. We've got our standard 3 racing winch completely out of the box, powered by a 2S LiPo that's just been charged up to 4.15 volts per cell. That's stalling out, and it's going to lock the reading sometime soon. It should beep. There we go. So it's hold on, just slacken that off, 3,860 grams. So that's about 3.8 kilograms. So let's just do a couple more of those. Again, stalling out. A bit higher that time, 4,050. I'm just going to do a few more of these and kind of get an average. Here we go for another one. The 4,050 is our record. That's locked at 3,770. I don't know if the variance here is from the measuring equipment or the winch controller. Not completely scientific this. I don't have loads and loads of winches and loads of scales to test, but you know, this is a rough approximation. Where's that going to lock out? That's lower. Okay, I'm going to take the highest reading, which was 4,050, and we'll go for that. Right, so here's our first result. Standard motor, 3 racing controller in a new 3 racing winch, and we got 4,050 grams. Right, so there's our default test. The best we got was just over 4,000 grams of pulling force here. So the first simple upgrade to do is to put a snatch block on your winch. Now, some of you may know about these already. If you don't, you can get these from RC4WD Drive. This is called an ARB winch snatch block, part number Z-S0341. And it's a little piece of metal here, very nicely made. And essentially what you've got is a pulley here that you put your winch cable around. And this splits in half so you can wrap the winch cable around it. So you've got your winch cable here, and you lay the winch cable around the pulley and then close these 2 triangle halves like that. And then what you can do is you take your hook and now you mount that back on your rig somewhere, and then this is what you're going to pull from. And because the cable's going out and back, you actually get a reduction in speed, because instead of all of the winding speed pulling in, you're actually pulling, half is pulling in and half's pulling the cable back round, if you think of it that way. But you get a doubling of power. If you look up winch pulley blocks on the internet, there'll be loads of diagrams and explanations of these. You can actually go crazy and have more than one snatch block kind of out and back with your cable and get more mechanical advantage and so on. But for this test, we're just going to go once. I've put a nail in there just so we can pull that back. Imagine this was on your bumper and you hook this to your bumper somewhere. So last time with the 2S battery and the standard 3 racing winch, we got just over 4,000 grams of pulling force. So let's see what we can do with a snatch block. Here we go. Oh, if I go the right way, that helps. Where's that going to stop? 5,900. Not a big change there. I wonder if that's because this is not wound up very well. Right, so I'm just going to reposition the cable around the other way, just to see if having a twist in the other direction makes any difference. I don't think it will, but let's see. So let's just reset our scales. Ready? Here we go again. Again, still on 2S. Standard motor. Wait for it to fix the reading. Bit better that time. I think there was a nicer cable run. And we got 6,130 that time. Right, let's see if we can beat our record of 6,130. Hey, a new record, 6,420. Right, so there we go, 6,420 grams, which is our record so far. This is using a brand new motor on the 3 racing controller. So we've gone from 4,000 odd to 6,400 grams just by adding a snatch block. So that's a pretty easy upgrade to do, is pop one of these on. Obviously you do have slower paying in and out with a snatch block. That's just one of those things. So now we're going to go for test 3 now, which is using a different winch controller. So I'm going to just take the snatch block off. And obviously all of these numbers I've got here, they're just sort of indicative. I don't know how accurate these scales are. I haven't got 10 sets of scales to give you massive averages. They're just indicative, so please don't post in the chat how poorly averaged out these results are or anything. I'm just going to do the highest number I can get, and I don't know how accurate these scales are. Anyway, winch controller number 2. This is a remote control that comes with this. This is a one I got off of eBay. This is made by Kappu Engineering. I'm sure you might have seen those in the modelling scene now and then. The controller does come in a little plastic box normally, but I've taken it out and drowned it in epoxy resin to make it waterproof. It's essentially the same kind of thing as the 3 racing one. Instead of plugging into your receiver, it's got its own receiver built in, and you use the remote control. It comes pretty much plug and play. It comes with the battery and the remote. You plug this into some power and you plug it into your winch. Off you go, you're winching. So let's unplug our spaghetti junction down here. We don't need the transmitter anymore. Now I'm going to use the same battery pack. So this is a Kappu remote control winch controller on a 2S battery, and we're going to run it until it stalls out and we fix the reading. There we go, 4,500 grams, slightly higher than the 3 racing one. Yeah, waiting for it to stall out. Slightly lower that time, 4,160, so 4,500 is our record. $4,310. So about 4,500 is as good as we got on that, just as a quick test. So we're now on stock motor on a Kappu winch controller, so 4,500. Slightly higher than we had with the 3 racing, although I'm not sure how accurate this is, so I'm going to consider a few hundred grams to be probably about the same. I don't know what my tolerances are, but anyway, roughly the same on this controller. So now let's go for the snatch block, see if that makes a similar difference to before. So we're looking for hopefully about another 50%. And for some reason my winch controller's not working. That's interesting. I wonder if I've upset it. Doesn't feel hot. Any ideas on a postcard? As you can see, I'm pressing the button and the Kappu controller is not listening. I have no idea why not. I'm going to unplug that. I don't know if it's got too hot inside maybe and it's cut out. It's still showing some power, but that's not working. So we'll go on to our 3rd winch controller to test. I hope we've not broken that one, but maybe we've learned something there. Right, now 3rd winch controller. We're kind of getting into some heavy duty stuff now. This is made by HeyOKPerformance. If you've not come across HeyOKPerformance, do go and have a look on the internet for them. There's a guy called Al in Canada who makes some really focused remote control controllers for winches and lights and so on. Really good for the sort of scale scene or just other model stuff. This is a winch controller here, and you can make it out on the camera, but there's basically 2 relays in here that are switched. So this is heavy duty, can handle lots of current and voltage kind of approach. It's not small MOSFETs or anything like that. And he waterproofs everything out of the box with Plastidip, so you can kind of know what background he's coming from. Anyway, this is very similar to the 3 racing winch controller insofar as you've got power in. I ordered this one to come with a Dean's connector so I can plug straight into the battery, and then you've got your output to the winch and you have a signal wire to go into your receiver. So let's go back to spaghetti junction over here. So we're using our receiver again. I'll unplug the 3 racing controller, and now let's plug in the HeyOK 4-amp winch controller, and we'll plug that into the winch, and then I'm going to plug a battery in. Now I could plug the supply battery straight in here like that, but some of you will say, hang on, for the last test you were using a Tamiya converter and you might have some voltage drop across this connection, so I'm going to use the same thing again, in essence, basically. So we've got an adapter, so I've got an adapter here to convert the Deans into a Tamiya, and then we can plug the Tamiya into this connector and then into the HeyOK one. So in this test we do have another splice in line to give us a similar drop as before, so hopefully that's satisfied any pedants out there. Right, so we have lights, and I did hear, you probably didn't hear it, but this clicked. Now one of the cool things about the HeyOK winch controller is when it's not paying in or out, it shorts out the motor somehow and basically kind of gives you like a drag brake. So if I try to pull this out, that's a lot stiffer now than if I unpower. If I take the power off, you can see I can fairly easily pull it out. So now this is a HeyOK winch controller. This is the relay winch controller. He does make some other variants as well. This is with 4 amp contacts, 2S battery again, so let's see what we can do. Wait for it to stall out and read. 5140. Wow, that's significantly higher than we've seen out of this winch from the other controllers. Right, 5140 so far with the HeyOK. Let's just reset the scales and give it another go. 5280, even better. Here we go. Nowhere near as good that time. 4030, the variation's really strange. I don't quite understand that, but hey ho. I imagine it's probably the scales because they were quite cheap from eBay. Anyway, let's carry on. Let's see if we can beat 5280. Nope. Right, so that's our record for HeyOK winch controller by itself. Interestingly, significantly more than anything else just by changing the winch controller. So I guess you could say one upgrade if you want to get a bit more power is just to change your winch controller. Anyway, let's try this with the Snatch block. Okay, so Snatch block's in place now on the 3 racing winch, 2S battery and the HeyOK controller. Let's just reset the scales and here we go. Ooh, big numbers. Wow. It's spiked up over 10,000 and we're settling down on 8,920, so that's made a massive difference with the Snatch block plus the HeyOK controller. If you think we were back originally with the 3 racing winch with its standard controller, we were on 4,000 odd grams and we just spiked up at 10,000 and we're sat here, there you go, 8,920. Let's see if we can beat that. Now I've turned the Snatch block round just to try and make the cable a bit of a smoother run, see if we can get the best out of it. Not a lot lower that time. That's again, the variation is weird, don't understand it, but hey ho. Right, so I decided to just take the top reading that we did get. That's my philosophy on this one. Yeah, I know I should do about 10 different tests to the same setup and then average it out, but you know what? I'm not going to. I'm going to take the max reading I see. So, way in the lead at the moment is 8,920 grams of pulling force, which is the HeyOK controller plugged into a brand new 3 racing winch using a Snatch block. And as you can see, that's going from 4,050, which is an out of the box with the out of the box controller and no Snatch block. So we've definitely doubled our pulling power by changing the controller and putting in a single Snatch block on a new winch. And we do have a gap here which is the Kappu controller, which I don't know if it's going to come back and help us with anything now. Let's just plug it in and see if it wants to talk to anything or if we've killed it. So I'll just quickly pop it in here on a different battery. I just want to see if there's any life in it. We do have a light. Is it going to pull the winch? Ah, it's alive. I reckon it's probably got a thermal trip out on it then. So let's do a quick test with the Kappu controller then. And we need to do that on a Snatch block. So let's quickly pop in the same battery we were using before. Here we go. Big numbers. Wow, 9970. How about that? This little thing just beat the beat the HeyOK controller. 9970. I should make a note of that somewhere before I forget. Here we go again. $9,630. Wow. Looking pretty clever. Okay, let's pay out again and see if we can get near that. 9,630. I'm amazed. I would have expected this little thing to not have the guts. Let's give it another go. Here we go. Not as high maybe. Oh, I don't know. It's still doing pretty well. No, 9,150 that time, but still. Our champion for the Snatch block test so far is the little Kappu winch controller. I'm going to try that again. That's just amusing me so much. I must admit, I assumed that the HeyOK controller would have given us by far the best pulling power because it's just switched relays. Let's try once more. Oh, it's letting go. Interesting. We're going to get a reading. There we go. 8,980 that time. So we take its best reading. I'm pretty amazed by that. I'm going to go back and just give the HeyOK controller another test, just to see if we can get anywhere near that. It's the same battery as before. If anything, I'd expect the results to start to come down as the battery has done some work. Right, so we've gone through our first pass of what I think will be the most interesting tests, which is taking the 3 racing controller, the Kappu and the HeyOK. And as you can see, we've got quite a variation of numbers here. 4,000 all the way up to 9,970 there. Obviously the Snatch block, you can see the difference between the 2 results for each controller. Is a significant improvement with the Snatch block, and putting in the Kappu winch controller or the HeyOK gives you significantly more grunt than just the 3 racing controller, which is what I've been suspecting. I must admit that the 3 racing controller wasn't doing everything that the winch could do. So that's for the new winch, standard motor. I'm going to go off and grab my SCX10 and a Warn winch I have on another rig and take those out and get them on the rig and test them. I won't film that just because it's going to be more of the same, and we'll get the same numbers here for a 3 racing winch that's been out in the rough, it's got wet and rusty, and a Warn winch as well, and then I'll come back. Right, here's my SCX10 Jeep Rubicon, and you can see there's no winch here now. I've just unbolted it and unplugged it, so that's now going to go on our little test rig here instead of the brand new one, and we'll see how this performs. Okay, so I've just completed a bunch of tests using my used 3 racing winch compared to the new one, and it's really interesting, the results. On the 3 racing controller, it was consistently, and I did this, not an average, that's the max value, but I was done about 5 or 6 more pulls and it came out similar numbers. The used winch was performing not so well on the original 3 racing controller with no Snatch block, and I kind of figured, yeah, that's okay, I get that, it's been used a bit, it's going to be dirty or rusty. But then I put the Snatch block on, and 8,170 is a really strong pull, you know, beating the new winch over 1,000 grams. And I did reproduce that quite a few times, so that's an interesting difference there. I don't quite know why the Snatch blocks gives it so much more advantage, but anyway, moving on to the Kappu controller, that thing really does kick some winch butt. 5,610 compared to with a new one 4,500. that's weird. It sort of suggests that actually the winch that's been used for a while is maybe running and working better, and I got a colossal 10,290 best with the Snatch block. And then coming down to the HeyOK performance controller, not quite as impressive as the Kappu, but I have to say it was more consistent. That big 10,000 there from the Kappu, I couldn't reproduce that again. It was producing high 8-9,000s consistently, but never the 10,000 again. But the HeyOK, yeah, a good strong with no Snatch block, and then with a Snatch block 9,710, which beat the new winch previously. So overall, very interesting, varied set, but they were consistent in the fact that I could repeat those numbers. I really don't understand why the used winch was so poor with no Snatch block and then consistently better with a Snatch block. Anyway, what do the numbers tell me? Well, what I have noticed, not the numbers, rather just using it, the HeyOK winch controller seems faster. Definitely seems faster than the 3 Racing, and perhaps a little bit faster than the Kappu. I haven't measured it and timed it, but just sort of seeing how fast it goes in and out. Definitely way faster than the standard 3 Racing controller. I also really like the drag brake on that, locking the winch while it's cool. Otherwise, really impressed how this winch, which if you've looked at my previous build videos, my Axial SCX10, this has sat in a bath for well over half an hour. It's gone through lakes and streams, it's been covered in spray oil and solvent cleaner and hose pipes. It is performing overall better than, or at least as comparable with the new winch fresh out of the box. So I guess running in your winch motor is something that's beneficial. Right, so now we need to get a RC4WD Warn winch, which I've got on a rig I need to go and tear off, and we'll test that. Right, I'm just doing the first test with the RC4WD replica Warn winch. I've just pulled this off one of my scale trail trucks, and I just wanted to mention that I've gone and tested the battery that I've been using. This was charged up to 4.15 volts per cell, 2-cell pack, and it was down to 4.11, so it's dropped next to nothing. That wouldn't really cause a lot of difference, but I've charged it back up to 4.15 for this winch, just so we're not going to give it any disadvantage. So now we're back to going through the winch controllers and getting some numbers. Right, so there's the numbers. It's been really interesting doing these tests. I knew obviously that putting a Snatch block on was going to slow the winch line down but give me more pulling power, and we've seen the results here. But I hadn't really thought about changing the winch controller in the past. I've always just, oh, this is the controller that comes with the winch, plug it in, it works, fair enough, and kind of assumed that it would be giving all the power from the battery pack to the winch, which is obviously not the case. There must be some limitations on these components, whereas comparing it now to the HeyOK controller, this has really opened my eyes. It's quite a significant difference. So I'd put the 3 Racing winch controller in bronze, I'd put the Kappu in silver, and the HeyOK definitely as a strong gold. Very nice and fast, very consistent results, and also the braking on the winch line is a real added bonus. The only downside I would say with the Kappu was it did seem a little bit random. Sometimes it did really strong pulls and sometimes quite weak. I'm not quite sure why. Also, having the radio link I don't like because it's subject to interference, your battery runs out and the range is reduced. And also, if you've got someone else using one of these at a competition, you might find your winch is doing stuff when they're doing things as well, because there's no ability to change the frequency of this. I much prefer having your winch plugged into your receiver. Anyway, there we go. That's part 1 of this video. There's going to be a part 2 coming up soon where we will fill in all the numbers down here, and we're going to be looking at a motor upgrade for the winches. So I hope this video was useful. I'll see you in part 2. Questions or comments, please post them below. Thanks for watching.